Hello and welcome to yet another edition of News 18 presents Yuva Bharat in association with IIMUN, a student body that wants to unite nations but the Bharat way. Its President Rishabh Shah is with us as always. Good to have you with us, Rishabh. And today we're going to speak about the jobs of the future. And joining us is Girish Nair, founder and CEO of Curiosity Gym. It's also an edtech company. And Vijay Maniar, who's a former partner with SR Botley and Company, and they are also the Indian arm of EY. So Indian member arm of EY, Indian member company, if I've got that right, of EY, Vijayji. Good to have you with us. But former partner SR Botley and everybody knows who you are. And but let me ask you this. Let me start with you this. You're somebody who's just devolved of some very critical responsibilities, and you've seen about 4 or 5 decades of Bharat evolving, careers evolving, industry evolving. How do you see the future?
Very interesting question. It's evolved over the years. So when I go back in times and when I qualified and the kind of work which I was doing, so I was more of a generalist, practicing CA. But over the period, the complexities increased. I moved to different role. There also it was more of a generalist, but over the period it's more and more specialization which has come in. So it's getting specialization and super specialization, and the kind of work which we were doing or the way of doing has completely changed. So keeping and that pace is increasing by the time. So what I see in future, first of all, let's understand what will be the characteristics. So the characteristics will be, everything will be technology driven. So unless jobs of the future, whatever one is pursuing, unless one understands technology, and technology has two pieces. One is, hardware and maintenance. Other is development. So hardware and maintenance is one piece. However, development of technology is something which will become so critical. So the jobs of the future, one has to understand technology. Then what is technology? One understands the logic, one understands the problem, one goes into the detail to see that this is the problem and how this problem can be solved, and are there any other problem which is which can be solved. So technology will become number one, fundamental. Number two, one has to be keep in mind, no jobs will be permanent. Because it is so disruptive, the jobs will churn every few years. So please, don't, once one has got a degree, it's not the end of it. One will remain a student for life. One will have to learn, unlearn, relearn through the period. And, otherwise that person will be out of this. And lastly, I feel gig economy will increase. So Indians are inherently entrepreneurial. However, gig economy, part-time contract workers, it's not only, currently when we understand gig economy is not, only for delivery, people who come and deliver. It's much more. Even coders are, a part of. So anybody, coders are, part of gig economy. So gig economy will increase in size. So my, specs for the future is, number one, understand technology. Number two, please be mindful that no jobs will be permanent. Number three, gigs economy will take it over. We can go into, what kind of industries, if, that is what is expected, and we can go into what kind of industries, but each industry is changing. If you see Zomato, who would have, thought of Zomato 10 years back, or Uber 10 years back?
Now they're talking about the Zomato IPO, and the joke doing the rounds is tell the delivery man to tip you. So, but the shift is very clear. The colonial brainwash was कि जिंदगी में आगे बढ़ना तो अंग्रेजी सीखो. Now the thing is कि life में काम चाहिए तो coding सीखो. So the shift is very evident. You're going to learn a different language altogether to move on. Girish, Your thoughts, and then Rishabh, take it away. Yeah.
Sure. It's interesting you brought up Zomato. About 25 years ago, I was in Silicon Valley and was part of a startup called Webvan when we were doing food delivery. That was about 25 years ago when the internet was just being formed in the valley and all of that. And people were dreaming up many ideas. So many ideas are going to take a lot of times to come to maturity and fruition. Okay. So a lot of times when technology changes a lot, and technology is changing a lot in many spheres. I think in every single industry, whether it's manufacturing, it's retail, it's healthcare, it's automobiles, almost even in the service industry, there's a lot of technology that's going to happen. And just like you gave the example of Uber, this thing, right? And one would have thought even a few years ago that driving a car is not going to be replaced. Especially let's say in you know and already there are now electrical cars, automated cars. You go to the West, they're already talking about in 10 years, less than 10-20% of the cars are going to be human driven, if you will, right? Now, some of that is going to be hard to imagine today for many of us, right? But because of rapid changes in technology, where things like chips and really that, chips are going to become so much more powerful and not only more powerful, but it's going to be cheaper. So human beings are going to start saying, how do I make many aspects of every industry more efficient, right? And so, Vijay was saying, what's going to be important for students, whether they're in school or colleges or even after they graduate, is that constant ability to learn and to keep up with new stuff, right? And keep up with new stuff does it not need to be that they need to be inventing technology, but they can't be afraid of technology, right? And because there's going to be lots of different kind of jobs that get created, right? So when one talks about robotics and automation and all of that, it does not mean that every person needs to become a robotics engineer. But maybe, let's say in retail, already there's going to be, even if you're a retail manager, you need to know what you need some automation in that retail space to do. You need to be a advanced user to be able to interact with it. Just like we were all, 25 years ago, we were not internet users. And, we all now can't imagine running our lives without a mobile and an internet. So that kind of maturity is going to come. Right? And Rishabh can.
Completely agree. I think in '91 when I was born, if somebody would have asked my parents or somebody would have discussed the same conversation, they would have been asked saying, "Do you imagine Alexa playing your favorite music, or do you imagine a car which drives on its own?" Then I think people would say that you're absurd to even think about something like that. And today we're seeing that in reality. So. Quite honestly, 30 years from now, 20 years from now, things are going to dramatically change. So, very famous quote of Stephen Hawking is the one that comes to mind. He said, computers will overtake humans with AI within 100 years and everything will change. When that happens, the only thing that we need to make sure is that computers have goals that are aligned with us. And I quite honestly think that that's something that one will have to keep up with. And therefore, things such as coding are industries of the future. These are jobs of the future for sure. And I completely agree with what Vijay said, that it's going to go into gig economies, where I see so many of my friends even today who are qualified professionals who are working multiple jobs, in the sense not working for a particular company, but who are working for a multitude of things, and that's how they earn their livelihood. So 20, 30 years from now, I think that's something that's definitely going to happen. But I want to hear it from the two of you, actually. So I'll just quickly come back to Vijay. To my sister, who's a decade younger almost, and to the very many who are watching this show, and which is why I must thank Anand and Network 18 for curating this show, because this is the first time that something like this is actually happening on national television. Vijay, to them who are watching, what is it that they should be focusing on? What would be the areas of academia that you would encourage them to study?
I think academic-wise, STEM is something which one must learn. Science, technology, engineering, maths. That will, because unless one understands technology, again, I harp on technology, through this discussion. But unless one understands, things in detail, because that will, maths will tell us that how to do it. So the STEM education, I think, will be very, very fundamental. Secondly, I feel humanities. Why? And let me tell you why this, understanding human behavior will be important. Because the interface between customers or vendors or people will be all through technology.
Just to throw a different perspective, when Sanjay was sitting next to Dhritarashtra 5,500 years ago and he could watch what was going on in Kurukshetra, what makes one think that it was not a webcast? You know, कि कहीं दूर से कोई मुनि अचानक प्रकट हो जाते थे. How was it not a 3D hologram or just a video call like we were having? So technology in different eras and different times has always been there. How is it that the temples made in the Aztecs by the Aztecs mirror the temples made in Tamil Nadu by the Cholas and the Pallavas, or even before, or the schematics of the Angkor Wat is similar to what we can find in South America? Either they could travel these continents or they could connect across a medium where they could share knowledge. So that's another way of looking at things. And perhaps we are somewhere reinventing the wheel, and we reinvented the wheel in the last 20 years like nobody's business, because in 10th, 12th standard there was trunk calls and STDs, and then we moved to Kandiwala PCO, and immediately by the time I had graduated, within 3 years of graduating, I'd moved from PCO to pager to mobile phone. So that jump happened in the 90s and early 2000s. And today we are at a place where data is so cheap that there's no cost to it, actually, quite literally no cost to it. But yes, the dynamics will change and the orientation will change. But are we equipped as a country, Girish? May I ask you this? Are we equipped as a country? Are we already thinking in those lines? Are parents thinking in those lines? और आर पेरेंट्स स्टिल सेइंग कि मेरा आज बच्चा पैदा हुआ 3-4-5 years old, भाई मुझे उसको येल भेजना है, हार्वर्ड भेजना है, क्या करने भेजना नहीं माना, येल भेजना, हार्वर्ड भेजना. That's the thought process in the urban metros. In certain governments and states, they are busy teaching their children, wanting to change their native language and say, I will teach them only in English,
Right.
rather than saying, I will teach them coding. I will orient them towards what is going to get them jobs, irrespective of which language they learn. You have to learn the language that is going to get them the job. Speaking in English is no longer going to get you a job. But coding is. Learning a computer language is.
Great question. So I think that, so we all agreed that coding is going to be one of the universal languages of the future, irrespective of which country, irrespective of which state. Coding as a mindset of understanding coding, Now people now think, is which language in coding, and actually as we run a coding academy as well. It actually really doesn't matter which language in coding, because as different technologies themselves change, and the languages and codings may change. So they may start with Scratch and then go to Python and Java, and over 10 years the language itself may change. But if at a young age students start developing the ability to think in terms of logical thinking, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of how do you design something, how do you take a problem and start figuring out a solution of how it can be coded, then irrespective of the language of coding, and there may be 3 or 4 popular languages today, but those popular languages today may not necessarily be the popular languages tomorrow. Right? For example, when I was growing up, a very popular language was C and C++. Today, then it moved to Java. Now it may be Python that's used worldwide, including in Wall Street and and different industries. So what is going to be important is having the ability to inculcate that logical thinking, in which coding is a key subject.
I was just wanting to come in on the part of the question that you asked, Giriji, where you said, is India ready for jobs of the future? Is India future ready? And that's something that I just want to quickly chime in. And this I've seen with dealing with a lot of young people, in the sense that up until now, at least, the and this I say with full knowledge of the fact that a lot of young people work on different disciplines outside their school curriculum as well and their college curriculum as well. But the kind of impetus that was needed from the government's end and the kind of roadmap that was needed from the government's end was in many ways non-existent. This I say with the fact that the new education policies come in, and that's really opened up the prism of learning, which is why if you see the NEP and just talking about it for 30 seconds is they're allowing students now from grades as early as grade 5, grade 6 in order to learn certain skills. And when you're moving away from a knowledge-based economy into something that is going to be largely gig-driven or skill-driven, then things such as this are going to be what is making us future ready. And I'm not saying that everything is done correctly. There are so many gray areas as well. But at the end of the day, it's a start forward, a step forward. And I think that is something that is most definitely needed.
But like they say, even a Bhishma needed Parshurama or an Arjuna needed Drona.
Yes.
Or how you would look at it that a Chandragupta needed Kautilya. Not everybody is born Ramanujam or Edison that they can figure it out themselves.
Yes.
So equipping the teachers is the critical part, Vijayji. And those who have got to orient the next generation have to be first oriented and understand that this is all getting disruptive. So educational institutions, teachers have to unlearn and relearn. So it has to start from there. And we actually in the current system have a dearth of good teachers. We're at least 1 lakh teachers short. It's a conservative number that I'm putting out, but that's how it is.
It's more like a million.
So this is a huge reorientation that is required, because we don't have as many institutions and as many classes and as many courses as there are students. And just 115 years ago, there was Vedic learning and Sanskrit being taught sitting under a tree in small villages. But today, even that is gone. So what is being taught is somebody who can't speak a language is teaching them everything wrong. Somebody who can't count is teaching them everything wrong. Those who've been placed there, a lot of them are good people who are not getting the opportunity, and a lot of people are teaching absolute muck into children and who are most impressionable. At a time when you can actually learn 6 languages, you're not even ready to teach them 4, 2 of which should be technology oriented. Language is a language. It's going to get coded into your brain, which is also a computer. So Vijayji, what needs to be done there?
So I think we should start rewarding innovation and creativity. So like in US universities, if you see, it's not that only academics which gets evaluated. It's that innovation and creativity, and how that gets rewarded, whether as a student, as a job. It is slowly becoming that innovators or coders are rewarded higher than the salesperson, which we have always thought selling is most critical. But now the building product or building innovation gets, so that piece of rewarding innovation it should start from schooling itself, and how one have it in the part as a part of curriculum, as Girish rightly mentioned, Rishabh rightly mentioned. But this this gets into as a curriculum, innovation, creativity, and how this gets into channelized into where that student is in the right space. So it's a little from a student's perspective, it's a little longer term, but I think that should start, and we should move away from muck learning, which we mentioned, and how do we have the subjects of choice by the students. Today the curriculum is very, very restricted, and it's more academic focus. How do we have more and more non-academics, which is also included as a part of curriculum, and students gets evaluated accordingly.
And the other thing is because of, let's say, cloud software, and you rightly pointed out, Anand, the critical part of this is teaching the teachers. In order for us as a country to scale on innovation and catalyze curiosity in students, what needs to happen is teachers need to be trained. Many of them have the right mindset to learn. Many of them may need to be encouraged in different ways, including higher salaries, because they are, and, including giving them a status in society that otherwise, we need to really respect our teachers and give them a status and make that a prestigious position.
Quickly to add in, you did mention about, I think the most pertinent point that you touched, that we touched upon today is that teachers who are training the students. And I've seen this personally again, where sometimes students come and saying, "Ye class nahi padna hai," and I don't want to attend this class, and especially on these Zoom conversations. And this I'm talking about urban India. And we ask them, they're interning at the organization, Anand, and then we're like, "But 1:30 baje, how are you interning at 1:30 in the afternoon? How are you doing this task?" And they're like, but this professor is not good enough. Any which way, there's nothing to learn. And that's really shocking, because what you're saying is so true. And this is of the more urban elite institutions that there is a problem. So I can only imagine that when percolated across the country, in rural areas also, it's a pressing issue. The fact is that academia wants to learn, but sometimes, like you said, Anand, that everybody needs a dronacharya. And this time, the teachers also are looking for a dronacharya who essentially guides them. And to that end, I think a more robust system, a robust plan in order to get the next generation of teachers. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't train this generation, but the next generation of teachers who are currently passing out, we need to really make this a lucrative proposition for them. It should not be that you're not a successful engineer, or you're not a successful lawyer, doctor, chartered accountant. So eventually you get into academia. And this is something that we can definitely learn from both our own culture and more so as a visible example today from the United States, where technically our best minds, some of them, are going out there and teaching. And this, which I've had many a conversation with a lot of people saying, "Why don't you come to the IIMs and places out here and teach?" And at the end of the day, they say the same thing that Girishji said. It's not the same kind of respect, compensation, etc., way of life. And that, I think, is civil society. And as young people, the ones who are watching, making a conscious step in order to make sure that we have our best teachers firmly in India, and that our dronacharyas don't run away to countries abroad.
But gentlemen, it's been great. It's been fantastic talking, and at least we've initiated this conversation on jobs of the future, and we'll try and build it into a series and then try and dissect the various dynamics on this entire technology platform itself, and how the integration of various fields will happen. Gone are the days when you look at it as science, commerce, and arts. It'll have to be a reworked qualification segregation, where certain subjects will become integral. They will not be that you can't not choose them. They have to be part of your curriculum, and then you add on. So pizza ka base to zaruri hota na. So that base is there. Then you choose the toppings. So on that note, I thank you all. Thank you very, very much. Always wonderful to connect with minds that are thinking about the future. Wonderful speaking with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijayji. Thank you, Giriji. Thank you.
Thank you.